Attic Secret. We had just moved into the old Victorian house on Maple Street. It was perfect, or so we thought. The charm of its creaky wooden floors, grand staircase, and spacious attic was irresistible. My wife, Laura, and our daughter, Sophie, were just as excited as I was to begin this new chapter. It all started innocently enough. One rainy afternoon, while unpacking boxes in the attic, I found a locked trunk hidden behind some old furniture. Intrigued, I called Laura up, and together we pried it open. Inside, we discovered a collection of old dolls, faded photographs, and personal items. They belonged to the Morris family, who had lived here decades ago and mysteriously vanished without a trace. The photos depicted a happy family, a mother, father, and a young girl about Sophie's age. Among the items was a delicate locket engraved with the name Emily. A chill ran down my spine as I held it, but I brushed it off as an overactive imagination. That night, strange noises echoed from the attic, soft whispers, and the sound of footsteps. Laura and I dismissed it as the house settling, but Sophie began to act strangely. She would sit in her room, talking to someone we couldn't see. "Who are you talking to, sweetie?" Laura asked one evening. "My friend Emily," Sophie replied cheerfully. Laura and I exchanged worried glances, but decided not to make a fuss. Children often had imaginary friends, we reasoned. Yet, as days passed, Sophie's conversations with Emily became more disturbing. She spoke of dark, frightening things, a fire, screams, and a hidden room in the house. Determined to uncover the truth, I began researching the Morris family. The deeper I dug, the more sinister the story became. The family had vanished after a tragic fire, but their bodies were never found. Local legends spoke of a haunting in the house, but details were scarce. One night, as the noises from the attic grew louder, I decided to investigate. Armed with a flashlight, I climbed the narrow staircase. The air grew colder with each step, and the feeling of being watched was overwhelming. When I reached the attic, the trunk was open, and the dolls were arranged in a circle, their eyes seemingly following me. Suddenly, Sophie's voice echoed behind me, eerily calm. "Emily wants to show you something, Daddy." I turned to see Sophie standing in the doorway, her eyes distant and strange. She led me to a corner of the attic where the floorboards were loose. With a sense of dread, I pried them open, revealing a hidden compartment. Inside, I found child remains and the unmistakable glint of the locket we had discovered earlier. Emily's spirit, tethered to the house by the trauma of her death, had been trying to communicate with us through Sophie. Her family had been murdered by an unknown assailant who then set the fire to cover up the crime. The killer was never found, leaving Emily's spirit restless and vengeful. Desperate to save Sophie and put Emily to rest, we held a small ceremony, acknowledging the Morrises and promising to uncover the truth behind their deaths. As we did, a chill wind swept through the attic, and Emily's ghostly form appeared before us, her eyes filled with sorrow. Slowly, she faded away, leaving behind a sense of peace. In the following days, Sophie stopped talking to Emily, and the strange noises ceased. The house felt lighter, the oppressive atmosphere lifted. We continued our lives, but the memory of Emily and her tragic story stayed with us. We never found out who killed the Morris family, but we made sure their story was known, hoping it would bring some justice, however small. Even now, years later, I sometimes hear faint whispers in the night, a reminder of the dark secrets our house once held and the restless spirit we helped find peace. Life settled back into its usual rhythm, but the memory of Emily and the tragedy that had unfolded in our home lingered. We tried to move on, focusing on our family and the many joys of living in our beautiful Victorian house. Yet, there was always a sense that something, or someone, was watching over us. One crisp autumn evening, as Laura and I sat in the living room, Sophie came down the stairs, clutching a tattered old book. "Mommy, Daddy, look what I found in the attic," she said, her voice tinged with excitement. Laura and I exchanged concerned glances. We had thoroughly searched the attic after the incident, ensuring no hidden secrets remained, but this book was new to us. It was a diary, its cover worn and pages yellowed with age. As I carefully opened it, a familiar name greeted me, Emily Morris. The diary detailed Emily's life before the tragedy, happy memories interspersed with dark hints of fear and confusion. The final entries spoke of a man who visited the house frequently, someone Emily's parents seemed wary of. "He scares me," one entry read. "Mommy and Daddy don't like him, but he keeps coming back. I hear them arguing at night." As I read those words, a cold shiver ran down my spine. The diary held crucial clues, and perhaps even the identity of the killer. We needed to take it to the authorities. The next day, we visited the local police station, presenting the diary to Detective Harris, who had taken an interest in our case that we initially uncovered the Morris family's tragic story. He promised to investigate further, intrigued by the new evidence. Days turned into weeks, and we heard nothing. Life carried on, but the sense of unease grew. Then, one stormy night, the noises returned, louder and more insistent than ever. Footsteps, whispers, and the distant sound of a child crying echoed through the house. Determined to end this once and for all, Laura and I ventured into the attic, our flashlights cutting through the darkness. The temperature dropped sharply, and the oppressive feeling of being watched returned. In the center of the attic, the trunk stood open once more, the dolls arranged in their eerie circle. "Emily, we're here," Laura called out, her voice trembling. "Please show us what you want us to see." The air grew thick, and a faint glow appeared in the corner of the attic. Emily's spirit materialized, her form more distinct than before. She pointed to the far wall, her eyes filled with urgency. We approached the wall and noticed a loose panel. With trembling hands, I pried it open, revealing a hidden compartment. Inside was a stack of letters, meticulously preserved. They were addressed to Emily's parents, from a man named Harold Blackwood, a name that had come up in the diary. The letters detailed a business arrangement gone wrong, escalating into threats and ultimatums. Harold had been desperate and angry, his words dripping with malice. He had promised retribution if he didn't get what he wanted. Armed with this new evidence, we returned to Detective Harris. He was astonished by our findings and reopened the case. The investigation led to the discovery that Harold Blackwood, a local businessman, had indeed been involved with the Morris family. Though he had died years ago, his crimes were brought to light, and the Morris family's story finally found its place in the public eye. With the truth revealed, the restless spirits of the Morris family could finally find peace. The noises ceased, and the oppressive atmosphere lifted for good. Emily's presence, once a source of fear, now felt like a gentle guardian watching over our home. Sophie grew up in the house, her memories of Emily fading into the background of her childhood. We remained in the Victorian house on Maple Street, its haunted history becoming a part of its charm rather than a curse. Years later, as we sat around the dinner table sharing stories, Sophie, now a teenager, smiled and said, "Remember Emily? I think she was just lonely. I'm glad we could help her." And as the evening sun cast long shadows across the room, I couldn't help but feel a sense of gratitude. The house had been haunted by tragedy, but we had uncovered the truth, giving a voice to the voiceless and bringing peace to the restless. In doing so, we found a deeper connection to our home and a reminder that sometimes the past must be acknowledged for the future to be truly free. The haunted painting. When we moved into our new house, the first thing that caught my eye was the painting. It was an old, large canvas left behind by the previous owners, depicting a sinister-looking figure draped in dark robes, standing in a shadowy forest. The eyes of the figure seemed to follow me, wherever I went, an unnerving illusion that sent shivers down my spine. My wife, Laura, dismissed it as a trick of the light, but I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. The first few nights were restless. We heard strange noises, soft whispers, the creak of floorboards, and faint, eerie laughter. Laura and I would wake up in the middle of the night, convinced someone was walking through the house. One night, I found the painting slightly askew, as if someone had moved it. The figure seemed closer to the foreground, its eyes more piercing than ever. Things escalated quickly. Objects started to move on their own. Laura's favorite vase shattered on the floor, despite no one being near it. Lights flickered unpredictably, and cold drafts swept through rooms without explanation. The kids, Sarah and Tim, were terrified. Sarah claimed she saw the figure from the painting standing at the foot of her bed one night. Tim refused to go near the living room, where the painting hung. Determined to get to the bottom of this, I started researching the history of the house and the painting. I discovered that the previous owners had experienced similar disturbances. The painting had been in the house 4 generations, and every family that had lived there reported hauntings and mysterious deaths. The figure in the painting was rumored to be a malevolent spirit trapped within the canvas, its curse dating back to an ancient, dark ritual. One evening, as we sat around the dining table discussing our next move, the lights went out. The room plunged into darkness, and a chilling voice whispered, "Release me." We fumbled for flashlights, and when the lights came back on, the painting was on the floor, the glass shattered. The figure seemed to be reaching out from the canvas, its eyes filled with rage. We knew we had to destroy the painting, but we also feared releasing the entity into the real world. After much deliberation, we decided to burn it in the fireplace, hoping the flames would contain the spirit. We gathered around the hearth, watching the fire consume the canvas. As the painting burned, the house shook violently, and the blood-curdling scream echoed through the rooms. When the fire finally died down, the painting was nothing but ashes. The strange occurrences stopped, and the oppressive atmosphere lifted. We felt a sense of relief, though we couldn't be sure the entity was truly gone. Weeks passed without incident, and we began to believe we were safe. One night, as I tucked him into bed, he pointed to a dark corner of the room. "Dad, look," he whispered. My heart pounded as I turned, expecting the worst. There, on the wall, was a small, soot-covered fragment of the painting, the figure's eyes glaring back at me. It seemed we hadn't destroyed it completely. The entity's presence lingered, a haunting reminder that some curses are not so easily broken. The sight of the fragment sent a chill down my spine. I carefully removed it from the wall, my hands trembling. Tim watched, wide-eyed, as I carried it downstairs to the kitchen, where Laura was cleaning up after dinner. "Look at this," I said, showing her the charred piece. Her face paled as she realized what it was. "We need to get rid of it," she said, her voice barely above a whisper, "all of it." We decided to gather every member of the family and search the entire house for any other remnants of the painting. We combed through every room, turning over furniture, emptying drawers, and checking behind picture frames. It felt like the house was mocking us, its silence more ominous than ever. After hours of searching, we found a few more fragments scattered throughout the house, hidden in places where we rarely looked. Each piece seemed to emit a cold, malevolent energy, as if the spirit within was clinging desperately to the material world. We collected the fragments in a metal box and carried it out to the backyard. The night was dark, the moon hidden behind thick clouds. We dug a deep hole, filled it with the pieces, and doused them with gasoline. As the fire roared to life, I hoped this would be the end of our nightmare. The flames flickered and danced, casting eerie shadows on our faces. We watched in silence until the fragments were reduced to ash. Then, We buried the ashes deep in the earth, hoping this would be enough to contain the malevolent spirit. The following days were surprisingly calm. The house felt lighter, as if a dark cloud had finally lifted. Sarah and Tim slept through the night without any disturbances, and Laura and I started to believe that we had finally rid ourselves of the haunting. But one evening, as I was locking up the house for the night, I heard a faint whisper. "You can't escape me," it said, sending a jolt of fear through my heart. I tried to ignore it, convincing myself it was just my imagination. A week later, Tim fell ill. He complained of nightmares, where the figure from the painting chased him through the house, its eyes burning with rage. His fever spiked, and he began speaking in a voice that wasn't his own, uttering cryptic phrases and warnings. Desperate, we sought help from a local historian who specialized in occult artifacts. She listened to our story with a grave expression, then told us the truth. The spirit bound to the painting was too powerful to be destroyed by fire alone. We had only succeeded in angering it further. "You need to perform a binding ritual," she explained. "It's the only way to contain the spirit and prevent it from harming your family." She gave us detailed instructions, along with a list of items we would need. That night, we gathered in the living room, the air thick with tension. We followed the historian's instructions to the letter, chanting the incantations and using the items she provided. As the ritual progressed, the house began to shake, and an unearthly wail filled the air. The temperature dropped, and shadows flickered on the walls. We held hands, forming a circle around the remnants of the painting. With a final, desperate cry, the spirit seemed to implode, its dark energy collapsing in on itself. The house fell silent, and the oppressive atmosphere lifted. We stood there, trembling, but relieved. Days turned into weeks, and life slowly returned to normal. The nightmares ceased, and Tim's health improved. We couldn't be sure if the spirit was truly gone, but the house no longer felt haunted. We remained vigilant, though, knowing that some evils are never truly vanquished. The experience had changed us, leaving us with a deep respect for the unknown and a wariness that would stay with us forever.